All right, and welcome back to another Indy Investor Pod, the podcast where we like to just take all things Indy real estate investing and just talk a little bit about them. So, why is Indy such a great place to invest? Because it is. Why is it such an awesome city to live in? Because it is. All those things. So that's where we're just going to kind of break down different things throughout this show. Today, I got Randy Placencia with me, and I'm excited to tackle this idea with him. So we're basically going to tackle the top 5 things that buyers can do to help out the people that are bringing them properties, whether it's wholesalers, other sellers, whoever, they're realtors, whatever. What are the top 5 things that buyers can do to basically help them out? And with that, let's get on with the show. All right, and welcome back to another Indy Investor Pod. So I'm very excited to have Randy Placencia here with me today. We're going to be talking about the top 5 things that buyers can do to help out the people that are bringing them properties. So how's it going, Randy?
Great. How are you doing?
I am excited. So I'm also excited just to have you on here, man. So first time you're being on the Indie Pod with us. So thank you for joining.
Yeah, I love it, man. I'm happy to be a guest and excited.
I'm really excited because I know, like, as we're planning out future episodes and things like that, I know that you are going to be some of the hosts sometimes on this show and bringing on guests and talking to them and picking their brain a little bit. So I'm super excited about that, man. So thanks a
Yeah,
lot.
thanks.
All right. So for today's show, and this really just kind of stemmed from a conversation that we had the other day of like, man, we need to do a podcast on this. And this is really just like the top 5 things that buyers can do to just help out the people that are bringing them properties. So if you don't know Randy, Randy is our disposition manager. So he's our sales guy. He's the one that sells all of our properties for simple wholesaling, simple REI for our companies. So he's the one that handles all of that. And we were just kind of talking the other day of just how he was talking to a buyer and they were kind of like, he's like, hey, yeah, you're interested in duplexes in 46205, right? And he's like, oh no, that was like a few months ago. I've changed my criteria and I'm doing this now. I'm like, I just talked to you like 2 months ago. I didn't know why you told me this. So it's one of those things of, man, we try to do our best to stay in touch with everybody and connect with everybody. But when we're turning as many properties as we can, and this is the case for a lot of the bigger wholesalers, even smaller wholesalers and stuff too here in Indianapolis, or investor agents, things like that, of making sure that they're up to date on some of the things that their buyers want, what they're looking for. But we thought it'd be cool to just do a show, maybe the top 5 things that the buyers can do to also help out those people that are bringing them properties. So it is a relationship thing. It is a two-way street. We're going to do everything that we can. If there's anything that we can do even more, let us know how we can help you out. But we thought it'd be cool to just do a show like this too. Just so we could give you like maybe little tips, little things that like, hey, what helps out Randy? I was in Randy's position before he was, and I was just like, yeah, this would be great. Like we need to kind of do something like this. So Randy, before we get into the list, do you have anything to just like kind of just off of that of what we want to say before we dive into this?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of not just wholesalers, but anyone working with any buyers, even agents, maybe, like when they've got their buyers they're working with, it's just sometimes it gets confusing or things kind of get lost in communication. If everyone's not on the same page of what the goal is and what everyone's trying to accomplish. So I think that's it's going to be the big takeaway from today is just having a clear communication with your buyers and just knowing what they want.
Yeah, it's very true. They always like, it's cringy when you have this conversation sometimes when a buyer's like, oh man, I would have loved that property. Why didn't you send it to me? And I'm like, well, you last week you told me you wanted duplexes. This is a
Yeah.
single family, like on the other side of
You
town or
told
whatever.
me.
So, no, so that's cool. So with that, and we came up with a list of 5 as we were talking yesterday, and this list is in no order at all or anything like that. So no order of importance. So we're just going to kind of throw out some of these topics and just kind of go with it from there. So one of the things we said was that basically the buyers just that they know what they want. That's just that's a huge thing for buyers to know kind of what they want to do, what they are looking for, kind of what that end strategy is that they want to do. And it's definitely okay if that changes. It probably is going to change. It should change almost some of the times, and especially when you're starting off new and you have an idea, and that might change up and stuff like that. But just having an idea of what you want. Those times is, sometimes the buyers are like, oh, just send me everything. I don't know what I'll look at everything. And we can do that. That's easy to do, but we
Yeah.
want to be specific. We want to know what you want. And if you know what you want, we can definitely pinpoint it and get it to you before anybody else, even sometimes too. So Randy, when it comes to buyers knowing what they want, what are some tips that you kind of have for them on that?
Yeah, I think that kind of plays a part in like when I meet a buyer for the first time, either if they're in Indy or they're outside of Indianapolis. Um, a lot of the conversations usually go along the lines of, I'll look at any deal if it makes sense. And I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean? Because we literally have properties in all areas of Indianapolis, in different price ranges. So the numbers make sense for any type of investor. So like when you say when the numbers make sense, for what strategy? Like, tell me what you want to do. If the numbers make sense for a flip or a buy and hold, like, tell me more about that. So I think that's key. There is just for them to communicate to me as a deal provider, kind of break it down. Like, what do you mean by, like, when a deal makes sense? What's the goal here? What are you looking to do? And then to go into what they want more. Neighborhoods, location, are they okay with, the inner city parts where there's probably going to be a little bit more crime, but it just comes with the territory, but you can get great investment properties in there? Or do you want to play the safe card and kind of move outside of the loop here in Indy, if anyone's familiar with that, the suburbs area where you might not hit the best, cap rates or the best numbers, but you're going to have solid renters there, or you can flip a property in a matter of, as soon as it hits the market, it's going to sell. So it's just being clear, I guess, being clear on their vision of where they want to buy and what type of property they want to buy and what are they going to do with it.
Yeah, I mean that's so important. It's great that I love the fact that you threw that out there. The people are like, oh, I'll look at anything as long as it makes sense. Well, they all make sense for us. That's why we're trying to. That's why we're selling them. Like we wouldn't have got under contract, but then it makes sense for one of our investors.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've noticed too, of even from us, so we work with a lot of wholesalers. We buy a lot of deals from other wholesalers. We JV partner with other wholesalers a lot of the times and stuff. And I did notice that, and it falls right into I've like kind of I've been susceptible to this a little bit too, of just like where somebody's like, oh, what are you looking for right now? I'm like, we buy everything. We buy from, $80,000 property that needs everything to a $200,000 property in the suburb. It doesn't matter,
Yeah.
but that doesn't help them. And I've realized this as we've kind of like talked more in depth about helping our buyers and getting buyers what they need. We do the same thing. And just like when I've actually said like, hey, I'm looking for single families in these 5 zip codes, they'll probably bring me one, and they'll bring me a deal, and it's usually a good deal. But when I say, we'll buy anything, I end up not getting that deal because I've left it wide open. When you get specific, when you get down to the nuts and bolts of what you really want, that's really what is helping your people that are bringing you the properties to, that helps them out tremendously. So
Yeah. Yeah. And just to, piggyback on this topic, I think it's important for people to, like, there's always going to be like a majority of people, a majority of investors in Indianapolis doing the same thing because that's what's in at that point, or that's the trendy thing to do, or whatever. Depending on the economy, I don't know, but there's always going to be one strategy where everyone's going to say, "Oh, I'm doing this now," so everyone's going to do it. I mean, I would just highly encourage, if that's what you want to do, that's great, but really dig deep and like look at your 5-year goal, 10-year goal. Is this going to get you there? Or is acquiring more rental properties going to get you there instead? So just reevaluate that and kind of don't get caught in, the hoopla and whatever's going on, the hot thing right now.
Yeah. What's
It's
working
not
for
good.
Randy might not be what necessarily works for me or gets me excited or makes
Yeah.
me happy. So
Yeah.
you got to definitely think about that stuff. So
Yeah.
all right, next thing on our list, we just said that they have their team in place. So that's always a good thing. And I understand that if you are new, you might not have your team in place, or you might need help with that. And we can definitely help you out with that, or we know people that can help you out with that and stuff. That's fine. But it's such a nice thing. It's kind of a breath of fresh air when you talk to someone that wants to be a buy and hold investor, and they have their contractors lined up and they have their property managers lined up, and then it's a real quick conversation kind of with the buyer almost. Then it's just like, hey, let's introduce me to your property manager and we can just run with it. We can go with it. We can get you as many properties as we need to. You can get into the properties quicker. They can check them out. All that stuff just makes things a little bit smoother. So we're not saying that you definitely need your team in place or anything. It's just one of those things that, man, that just makes it a lot nicer and it's a lot better to kind of work with. So just having that team in place. So Randy, kind of like when that difference of somebody that's like kind of new and doesn't really know anybody, and they're kind of putting their team together versus that buyer that's already, they have their property manager, they have their person in place, they have their contractor, all that stuff. Like how much of a difference it really is that?
It makes all the difference, especially if someone's looking at a property that they really want to buy and they don't have a team in place yet. It's going to delay the process of them pulling the trigger because they'll call me and say, "Hey, I really like this deal. Do you have any contacts for contractors or property managers? I'm like, in my head, I'm like, you should have this in place because now you might waste a couple days trying to interview a contractor or find a hopefully a reputable contractor that's honest and can give you some good quotes and get them in the property. But by that time, the property is probably already sold. So that's the big difference. It's going to delay your process on acquiring a good deal, and you probably won't go into the deal as confident as if you already had your team in place that said, hey, this checks all the boxes. I went and looked at it for you. This looks like a good property. Hey, your construction numbers, your rehab costs, this is probably what they're going to be because I've already stopped by the property and taken a look at them for you. So, you're good to pull the trigger on this deal. So it makes all the difference. And that we on the wholesale side, we kind of say, hey, before you start getting deals, build your buyers list. On a buyer side, getting, that wants to buy a lot of deals, hey, before you start buying deals, build your team first. That's kind of how I would think of it, especially for anyone that's not local here. It's so tough to buy in a market that you just either you're not familiar with or you just can't see the property. So you have to trust your team, and you just getting that team in place before you start, sending offers out on properties is just key, man.
Yeah, and that's really important. Such really good points. One of the things I like to suggest too, if you are new and you don't necessarily have that hey, this is my property manager, this is the person I know I'm going to be working with or whatever, or this contract or whatever. Have a couple of them. Just have a couple of them lined up and say like, hey, I want to build a relationship with you. I want to work with you. And when that top property comes across, maybe you can send both of them.
Yeah,
And you might have to maybe you have to pay a fee or whatever, but it's worth getting on into that property and getting that thing done that you need to versus kind of just being up in the air and putting things together, kind of willy-nilly at the last minute. Maybe it is just maybe a boots on the ground person too. Maybe it's just that one person that can, has a little bit of knowledge that can go through the properties, take all the pictures, videos, all that stuff for you and assess it that way.
yeah,
That's something. It's somebody that's on your team. So building that team in place of wherever you are. If you're local here and you have, that person, or you're going in the property and checking out themselves, do you have everybody in place that you need to pull the trigger? Those types of things. So having that team in place is clutch. It's very important and just helps out the process. And you're just going to be like Randy said, you're going to be so much more confident, so much more happy when you make that offer, because it's not just your decision. It's kind of everybody's like come together is like, yeah, our team likes this one. Let's go with this one. So
yeah. And I'm always willing to help out as much as possible. I always feel better because I always get the questions, hey, how much does this property need? How much is it going to cost? And I can give you, a ballpark figure, but I don't want someone making their decision based off of me. I appreciate it. I love it, but um, I would feel a lot more confident if they also had their contractor walk it first before making an offer and kind of verify, like, yeah, this is, he's within the range of what it's going to be, and we can move on with the deal. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's very important. We can give you an idea of what it needs and kind of what you're going to have to do to it and stuff like that. But everybody wants to do something different. We used to always put out like, hey, the rehab estimate is this amount. And we stopped doing it just because everybody was just so across the board. Even people that are just straight buying holds and you're like thinking, okay, this needs to be a rental rehab. They would still be, there's one guy that's going to be a little bit cheaper than the guy that's going to put a little bit more. Even if it's rental grade, it's a little bit higher in a rental grade and stuff. So everybody's just across the board. So you want to make sure that you have your people getting your numbers on for what you want to accomplish long term. So.
Yeah, I had a guy that was like, one guy said, yeah, it's gonna be like 15,000, and I think a guy who actually purchased that property from me ended up, he's like, yeah, I put like $5,000 into it and got it rented out. I'm like, wow, it's a $10,000 difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some people they have connections or don't know what it is, but they can just do it cheaper.
And then Randy was like, oh, great. So you have a down payment for our next property then.
Right.
So the next thing on our list that we kind of talked about is kind of going through this list of top 5 things that buyers can do to help out the people that are bringing them properties, whether it's a wholesaler or a realtor or agent or whoever. But the next thing on our list, we just have that they do their due diligence period before they make an offer. So I think that's really important. A lot of times that we'll send out a property or we'll connect a buyer with a property and they'll say it right away, like, yep, I like it. Yep. $50,000. I'm good with it. And then they go check it out and they're like, it needs this, it needs that. And like, man, you're kind of hurting our relationship here. You're hurting your reputation of how we do business and stuff like that. And it's not that we don't want to work with you. It's not that you can't put an offer in. It's just like, hey, just check out the property. Let us know. Just be honest with it. Like, hey, I really like this property. It's a great one. I think it's perfect for what I want to do. Is there any way I can go check it out tomorrow morning or something like that? Just letting somebody know like, hey, this is important. This is where I am, just in case maybe Randy gets a couple more offers on it. It's like, hey, I'm not going to accept anything because I know this one person's going to check it out. And then he's going to touch base with you too. Like, hey, I got offers on this. Check it out tomorrow morning. I need an offer by 10 o'clock or something like that.
Yeah.
Keeping people in the loop and being honest with it, but don't just throw out an offer and say, yep, I'm good with it. And then come back expecting to change your price, because it might not happen. And that sometimes hurts the hurts the relationship that we have going.
Yeah.
So Randy.
Yeah. So, speaking on that, um, I think for wholesalers, we're all in the business of getting properties and turning them as fast as possible. And so a wholesaler's dream is getting an offer, at an acceptable price, no inspection, close in a week. That's like a wholesaler's dream, right? And it happens sometimes, and some people can't close that fast, and that's perfectly fine. But that's what every wholesaler aims for. They want to get the property and then close it in a week. So by doing that, if you have, before you make an offer on a property, if you've already had your contractor walk in and take a look at the property, and you've done your due diligence in the neighborhood and you've looked at the comps, maybe your agent has pulled the comps for you, and you feel confident that, hey, we can buy this property at this price, and I don't have to worry about 5 days later something popping up and you either saying, hey, we need a $5,000 reduction, or we just need to completely walk away. Because that just kills the deal. And if it happens more than once, over and over, then the relationship there is kind of torched at that point. It takes a deal to get that relationship back on track. But yeah, I just think, it's all about timing for us. And I think maybe for me on our end, maybe because we list properties, people think we're trying to treat it like a typical listing, which it's not the case. We just list them because we're licensed, and it expands our exposure. But if an agent sends me an offer on one of our listings, which is just another wholesale deal, I'm expecting a wholesale process. They'll try to tell me a 30-day close, and I'm like, it's a cash deal. Like, we can close in 2 weeks. It's cash. Maybe the proof of funds are there. Like, we're ready to go. So. That's.
Yeah. So is it, like you said right there, just keeping your seller in the loop on what your process is. You can make an offer that minute if you need to and stuff like that, but just let them know like, hey, I'm going to check this out right now. We're good at this. Like, but I need 21 days to close this, or just right when you give that offer, and that
Yeah.
maybe that's in the offer and stuff like that, but just keeping everybody in the loop of all the things that could possibly pop up and things. So, I've had a couple of people that, I've done deals with before, and it's good. And like, hey, we have a great relationship, and I'll get their offer and like, yep, we're probably good for it. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, but I need 30 days to close this one. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that changes things a little bit
A little
and
bit.
stuff like
Yeah.
that. So, cause now I have holding costs, and I have, maybe I have to pay a little bit more here and there or something like that. So just keeping people in the loop on what you want to do, but just doing your due diligence before you make that like kind of set in stone offer, making sure you're good with your numbers and you're happy with them and stuff like that. That really goes a long way in improving the relationship and kind of what you have working with your agent, your wholesaler, your just person that's your boots on the ground, whoever it may be. So.
Yeah, and I just want to clear up one thing so no one gets the wrong idea. Is like, hey, if you absolutely need 30 days and we got a
Yeah.
solid deal, like that's fine. Like, I understand, but as a courtesy to everyone, I'll always ask, hey, can we close sooner? If it's not possible, it's not possible. But if you're a solid buyer and your circumstances require 30 days, but we're going to close, hey, that's just how it is, and that's what we'll do.
Yeah, definitely. And this is like, we're kind of talking like how this works, like with us and stuff like that. This is like commonplace between a lot of wholesalers, agents, sellers, and stuff like that. So we're speaking kind of in terms of us every now and then, but we're talking generalities really with all this stuff. So just basic tips to kind of keep in mind when you're doing this kind of stuff. So next thing on our list, and this is pretty important, that you can actually close. So you'd be kind of amazed at how many people we have maybe make an offer or offer like want to try to buy a property, something like that, and they can't close. They physically, like, for some reason they can't close. They can't do it. They can't pull the trigger. They can't get that to the end gate or to the finish line. So making sure that you just have, kind of goes back to almost, your due diligence stuff. You were having your team in place, but making sure you have the funds, you have whatever you need to be able to get that deal to the finish line, get it to the close, get it to the closing table. So important, Randy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sadly, there's people out there that have a reputation of getting properties under contract and not following through. And everyone, if you don't know about them, you don't know about them. You just think they're another buyer. But if you've done a deal with them, they'll come back and you'll just remember, hey, you said that you're a solid, sure thing, but you didn't get to the closing table, and I wasted 2 weeks. But again, showing proof of funds is huge. And if you tell people you're buying cash, but you're getting hard money, tell them you're getting hard money, because they'll think cash is cash and it's not the same, and things can still go south with hard money. So any type of proof of funds, or just being clear on how you're financing the deal is huge up front, just so the wholesaler or the seller is on the same page as you, as what to expect. And then agreeing, I think a big thing is agreeing on a closing date and sticking to it. So, in any purchase agreement, if you've got an inspection period, it's laid out and how long that's going to be. The closing date's going to be in there. And then on top of that, the title company, they have to operate on that closing date as well. So you can count on the title company to be ready to close on that date. And they'll call you and say, hey, are we closing on Friday? And it's Wednesday, and they're expecting a yes. And so is everyone else. But if it's, oh, I need another week or two, that's kind of a red flag. It's kind of a long time. So, sticking to your closing date that you committed to on the front end, making sure your financing's in place well before closing, that'll go a long way, and it should lead to a successful closing.
Yeah, and one of the tips I have with that too is, like, if you are using, whether it's a hard money lender or just a traditional lender or something like that, there's a pretty good chance that the person that you're buying that property from, if especially they do a lot of transactions, a lot of real estate investing in general, they might know that lender. They might have a relationship with them as well, so that might help the process along.
Yeah.
There's quite a few hard money lenders that if you're using them for our properties, I can basically just give them a call and say, hey, this is one of ours. Like, here's a lockbox code. Like, check it out, do whatever you need to. And they're like, oh, okay, it's one of you guys. That's good. Like, hey, do you have any paperwork on it? And then it's like, oh, we can do this in 2 weeks instead of, 3.5 weeks or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
relationships go a long way. Like with us, our title companies, hey, we need this closed in 2 days.
yeah.
Done.
Yeah. So that stuff's just all really important, but just making sure kind of on that, that front end that when you make that offer, when you're excited about that property, that did it, hey, this is the flip opportunity that I'm going to do in the, this next couple of months and stuff. When you're excited about that deal, making sure you have that things done on the front end to when you make that offer, you can come through, that you can close. So very important. Then also just one other thing to really strengthen that relationship, because once you do some of those deals, man, that who's ever giving you your properties, they're going to want to do, man, this person's great, man. They close, they say exactly what they're going to do. Like it just all improves all that stuff. So, yeah. All right, Randy. So last thing on our list that we kind of said is that that the person can actually, that they reach out to their sellers, the person that's giving them their properties, they reach out to them as much as we reach out to them to build their relationships. And we kind of mentioned this at the front of the show, but there's a lot of times that you just keeping us up to date on what you're looking for, what's your criteria, has it changed, has whatever's going on. We would love to know it. And that's true for every wholesaler, every seller, every agent who's ever bringing you your properties. If your criteria is changing or you're open to something new or whatever it may be, just let them know, keep them in the loop and stuff like that. So I know Randy kind of has like a goal of like, hey, he wants to, and we have a pretty extensive buyers list, of course, and stuff like that. And we talk to people a little bit more regularly than others and things, if especially have a good relationship with them. But as far as like our big buyers list goes, or as far as our buyers list goes, Randy tries to touch base with them like once a quarter. So, and sometimes we fall off of that and that happens and whatever, but a lot can change in 3 months. Your financial situation can change.
Especially now.
Especially right now. Yeah, your buying criteria can change. What you're looking for can change. Like all that stuff. Maybe you have to change property manager, whatever it may be. Whenever your criteria changes, if you just reach out and give some information, like that just helps them out of, oh, okay, now, John Smith wants this instead. This is great. I have one coming next week. Like that kind of stuff just really helps out. And I think it's just even little things. I think it's great. And it doesn't have to be like a criteria change. Just reach out every now and then. Say, hey, I'm in town. You want to grab a beer? Do you want to grab a coffee? Do you want to grab lunch? Any of those things I think is just great to touch base with. So, Randy, when it comes to when like buyers reach out to you, like we had this conversation yesterday, just like how awesome that is and how it just makes things a lot easier.
Yeah. When a buyer reaches out to me rather than vice versa, it's a breath of fresh air, man. Because now I'm getting a clear update of what they want to do, because they're telling me in the moment. It's a lot better when if I called them and they're like, oh, 2 months ago I started doing this. It's like, man, I probably could have had some properties for you before we put it on the market, but I didn't know you're doing this now. So just yeah, just keeping me or whoever you're working with updated with your current buying strategy and what you want, because it's going to change. It's always going to change. Um, but just keeping that communication out there is huge. It's going to go a long way, and probably do some more deals together.
Yeah. One of the things too, I would just kind of mention and this is something that we usually ask, and, it's something that a lot of, wholesalers and agents will do as well. But something, if you have a particular way that you like to communicate,
Yeah.
let your person know, like, hey, I just reach out to me on Facebook Messenger. If that's how you like to communicate, do that. So if you like
Yeah.
to text, if you like to call, if you're like, hey, I'm a Zoom, person, or I only like to meet in person, we can do it every 6 months, like whatever it is. Like if you have a certain way that you like to communicate, or you like the way that you like to receive properties, any of that stuff. I mean, as I mean, like Randy, yep, whatever he wants. Like he's a good buyer. Let's do it. So it's one of those things that it only helps out along. And I think it's one of those things, just being informed and being in the know of what you need and what you want. If there's something that, man, I would love to see this in your email blast. I would love to, get this, that stuff is great. Like we love to hear that kind of
That's
things.
awesome.
And
Yeah.
just, it's just as important as almost updating your criteria of like, man, I
Mhm.
kind of need this to go along with my analysis, because I have to spend some time doing this. And if you guys can just do it on the front end, yeah, that might help out everybody. So
Yeah, I mean, we've gotten that feedback before, and it's helped a lot. Like people said, "Hey, if you add this to your email blast, it'll help me make a decision better." That is music to my ears. I'm like,
yeah.
okay, whatever I can do to make your decision easier, I'm gonna do it. So
Yeah. So awesome. Let me just kind of run back through these real quick. So we had the top 5 things that buyers can do to kind of help out the person that's bringing them properties. So we have that they know what they want, that they have their team in place, that they're doing their due diligence before they make an offer, that they can actually close, and that they're reaching out to the sellers just as much to help build that relationship and update their criteria. So there's the 5 things that we came up with. If there are any other things that you think like, oh man, like this really helped me out as a buyer doing this or anything like that, we would love to know. We'd love to hear about it. There's anything we can ever do, like let us know. Let us know how we can help you in any way with your buying needs, whether it's with us or with somebody else in Indianapolis area. We probably work with them all the time anyway and stuff like that. So great community over here in Indianapolis when it comes to real estate investing. So one of my favorite things working here. But Randy, as we finish up this list, we finish up this pod, do you have anything else just to finish us off of, any other tips or any other advice just for the buyers out there when they're working with wholesalers or sellers or people that are bringing them properties?
always just do your due diligence up front, not just with any property, but anyone you're working with. If you're working with someone new, if you can meet them in person, that'd be best. But if not, you have a conversation with them. If it's a wholesaler, contractor, property manager, and also just get some referrals or references on them. Then my last piece of advice is to buy more properties from me, and let's all make money.
There we go. I like that. I like that. So awesome stuff. So thank you so much for joining in for this Indie Investor Pod, and we will see you on the next episode. Later, guys.